Well, maybe. I'd hope not, but this is just some stuff I've had on my mind regarding the show and how its debut will rock the internet. Because while getting posters of updated character designs for the past year, the hype for Hazbin Hotel has been gradually building and building. Even more so, but there's also a fair amount of criticism towards the show that's not even out yet, mainly about its art direction. Because while I do agree that Viv's old designs were very busy, especially for animation, some have gotten a bit toned down with all the details, but others somehow got worse because of it. And don't even get me started with all of that bloody red! Like, I get it, it's hell, but not every media's depiction of hell is just everything and everyone drenched in a red color palette. Nah, those are common complaints you'll see, but what I'm greatly worried about is that due to the wait for Hazbin Hotel, will that affect fans' expectations, and furthermore, based on Helluva Boss's writing, should we expect to see a similar method of storytelling? Like I said, due to years of waiting for Hazbin Hotel, a lot of fan works have been out to fill in those gaps, and could greatly influence how people view this show and the characters once it's actually out. Fan theories in comics aren't uncommon in fandoms, but for one with its canon all over the place, it's hard to differentiate what is fanon and what is canon. And sometimes, the fanon is much more appealing and just makes more sense than the actual canon. And that's what people tend to latch onto. While I do enjoy the fanonship between Angel Dust and Alistair, far more than the canonship of Angel Dust and Husk, mainly due to the fanworks and collective speculation the fandom has come to agree upon with how those two would interact romantically. But in the show, I know there's no way in hell that those two would ever get together. The sex-crazed hooker with the straight-laced ace, the potential dynamic is what's interesting about that ship. And if the characters don't behave in a way that some people have built up in their heads, you can expect confusion and a lot of infighting within the toxic parts of the fandom. Especially those who feel entitled to these characters, and because of the old cast who has built this sort of parasocial relationship with them, no shit they would behave this way. Which leads to the question of what is canon in Hazbin Hotel? Again, with this show being in the works for years now and an abundance of concept art, drafts, and live streams floating about on the internet, what can people actually expect from the show and what's just gonna get shelved into the background for Easter eggs? There's no telling until the show actually airs, and from there, I'd assume whatever is canon. Unless of course Hazbin falls into the same pit traps as Helluva when it comes to their writing. If Helluva Boss is anything to base off of what to expect from Hazbin Hotel's writing, then I'm even more worried about the show. Because Helluva Boss's writing can be boiled down to a lot of great emotional and badass moments with lackluster buildup. It has a lot of interesting ideas, characters, and their dynamics, but it tries to launch them all at once or doesn't stay consistent with what's already been established, thus resulting the show to become a hazard mess with a bow on top. Get it? Because VivziePop likes bows. I didn't realize that yet. While it excels in those emotional moments that really makes the audience feel for the characters, the lead up to those moments often feel unearned or sudden, at least they do to me. Like in Seeing Stars, Luna and Octavia reflecting on their fathers is great in a vacuum, but how we got there makes it feel shallow, especially considering this is the first time that these two have interacted on screen. Their first meeting is about their dads. A bit of a side tangent here, but I'm not a fan of Stolitz's first meeting when they were kids, because to me that just seemed like a big waste of time, and there could have been a different way to show both of their backstories individually. What was the point of tying them together if that did not come into play later? There was no greater purpose to it other than to have love at first sight, which is just bullshit. Oh, and y'all can give up any hope that episode 8 was going to progress anything plot-wise, because Viv has made it very clear that episode 7 of season 1 was the true ending. Meanwhile, this missing episode, while locked up in some copyright hell of itself, was just for spectacles. Something I feel that should have been communicated sooner rather than later to a dedicated audience that helps fund the show. Because for as much as people want to claim that Helluva Boss is a free show, it's not. It is largely fueled by the merch sales, which the team makes very clear every time they announce new merchandise. The audience is at least entitled to know where their money is going or if there's a delay in production. We don't need to know the details, just share what you can at the time. It's as simple as that. Ugh, sorry, I just needed to let that out because, for fuck's sake, indie showrunners, just communicate with your audience, please. Especially if they're your financial backers. Ugh. Oh yeah, Helluva Boss. Helluva Boss adds so much on top of the pile of characters they already have and loses sight of the plot. Is this show about a small business ran by a low-class imp using sexual advances to obtain an elite's power to stay afloat while also realizing they both want something serious and something real? Sometimes! But then, what's IMP's end goal here? Why did Blitz go into the business of revenge murders to begin with? Which could have and has bitten him in the ass before, when those bad humans land in hell, but from Hazbin's logic, we know that humans are only restricted to the Pride Ring, but then it leads into another myriad of questions of, why doesn't IMP just move elsewhere to avoid the bad humans? But then where are they gonna get their clientele? Because their clientels are humans. And then what are you gonna do about, like, all the evil humans? Oh my gosh, it's a huge conundrum and inconsistency. A major oversight when you think about it for too long. And knowing me, I think about a lot of stuff for too long, so major oversight. The show does not answer or even try to play with. Only like one time in the Cherub episode, but it was very small and minute. There should have been way more people after IMP's ass. But if the show is ultimately about the themes of different relationships, that's fine. But it's hard to be invested in those relationships when half of the cast, oddly enough a lot of the women, are lacking their own characterization or are just there to support their male counterparts. Moxie is a wimpy, overly emotional theater nerd that struggles with insecurities, but with Millie's love, he's able to bring out his confidence. Millie, on the other hand, as I've discussed many times before, has absolutely nothing going on for her beyond being Moxie's wife in a murder machine. She's the rock Moxie latches onto and doesn't have any standout character moments of her own outside of, again, violence and marriage, which oddly enough don't go that much hand in hand. Blitz is a standoffish dick due to his history of being burned by past relationships, and only comfortable showering his pent-up love onto Luna, his adopted daughter, who was reluctant to accept the overwhelming amount of affection all at once. Luna was in danger of either being euthanized or thrown out of the Hellhound Pound once she turned 18. So up until this point, we as an audience could only assume that she grew up in the Hellhound Pound and had to adopt this ruthless, uncaring, bitchy attitude in order to survive this prison. So this sudden showering of affection from Blitz would be foreign to her and interesting to explore instead of Luna constantly assaulting him. Hey, when the show wants to take it seriously, then I'll take it seriously, okay? Dark comedy just equating to violence is just the lowest denominator of comedy. Slapstick is funnier. Season 2, Episode 2 both shows a side of Luna that's willing to admit and acknowledge that Blitz does care for her, but also boils her back down to being an ungrateful bitch. So either make it consistent or don't. What the hell is even continuity anymore? Stolas was forced into a marriage where the goal was to bear an heir. He sacrificed his own comfortability just so Octavia could have a normal home life. But aside from Stella yelling at him and the paintings on their walls showing them all smiling, Stolas hasn't really sacrificed shit. If he really wanted to make a genuine sacrifice showing his love for Octavia, then he should leave Blitz out of any bonding time he's supposed to have with his daughter. That's what made Lululand frustrating for me, because that trip was meant to show him being a good dad towards Octavia. Show that he cares for his daughter. My frustrations with that episode is it does a lot of telling that Stolas is a good dad, but it doesn't show shit. What's worse is that Octavia basically plays the same role in Seeing Stars as she did in Lululand. Stolas being an unattentive father, his daughter runs off somewhere, and in the end Octavia forgives him because Stolas gives his word that he's gonna try his best, or he'll do better next time. Well, he needs to try better because I don't care how much of a bitch Stella is to him. Stolas should have never let her get in the way between him loving his daughter. But hey, I get it. Divorce is messy, and yet not common amongst royals. Which brings up the question as to why get a divorce after your heir is about 17 years old? If Stella and Stolas were both against the arranged marriage to begin with, then why do they share a bed? With how little characterization we've seen of Stella, I can imagine her being the type of person who would demand certain arrangements in order to just live with Stolas. Having separate rooms in the house and agreeing to just keep up appearances in public, which would explain all the happy family portraits. Greater question, what does Stella think of Octavia? We know she hates Stolas, for good reason or not, but what about the daughter that closely resembles him? We don't have a clear answer, just speculation and assumptions fans will create. Eat that shit up and claim as stellar writing, when in actuality it's poor and lazy writing. Because while Helluva will go out of its way to shed light on to why and how Blitz, Luna, and Moxie are the way that they are, Stella gets nothing. And I don't need this explanation as a means to redeem her character, but to add depth to it, outside of just being an angry, scorned wife, just as Millie needs more characterization outside of being a loving, strong wife. Helluva Boss has a massive problem when it comes to continuity and consistency with both its world and characters. Every question I have when it comes to this world and how the characters function within it just leads to another question after question after question after question, to the point where I believe that people love Helluva Boss far more for its brief shining moments within the show and fandom obsession and stans believing that our dear Queen Vivian can't do no wrong. Blind admiration at its finest. Otherwise, Helluva Boss criticism and discussion wouldn't be so divisive as it is. The show also has an issue neglecting every other character who isn't Blitz, Moxie, and Solus, while also introducing new characters that are interesting but clutters an already crowded cast. Hence my worry for Hazbin Hotel, which is a show with an ensemble cast, where some characters are more interesting than others, or they could have just been merged into one character. I will forever die on the hill that Angel Dust, a character with the most to gain and lose from the hotel, should have been the main character, as opposed to Charlie with her trust fund project. And with the premise of redeeming sinners, that just opens the door to even more characters flooding in and hogging up the screen. Best case scenario, Hazbin can be an episodic show that tries to redeem different sinners, and the characters go along for the wacky ride ahead. Or worst case scenario, Hazbin takes its functionally simple premise and fills it with needlessly convoluted plot points for certain characters, new characters overstaying their welcome, and the whole thing becomes a beautifully complicated mess like Helluva Boss has been so far. Now, while Viv has recently talked about learning a lot from writing Helluva Boss, I hope those teachings were applied to Hazbin Hotel, and that her writing staff is capable of maintaining a consistent tone for the series. Otherwise, this improv method to writing, just saying yes and to everything, is gonna lead to their downfall. Will I be watching Hazbin Hotel this coming summer? As soon as they say where the hell it's gonna be available, yes. This has been a long-awaited project for Viv, her team, and her fans. While I wouldn't place myself in any of those categories, I do wish the best for her show and the people that worked on it. I don't expect it to reach Arcane or Into the Spider-Verse levels of peak fiction, but I also don't think it's going to be the worst thing ever since sliced bread. Even if it just turns out to be okay, that's far better than what I could expect based on Viv's past works. And to be honest, that bar ain't getting any lower. We'll just have to see how Hazbin Hotel turns out once it drops, and the internet collectively shits themselves. In the meantime, tell me what your expectations or fear for Hazbin Hotel is in the comments. I'd love to know.